Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. In this video I'm going to critique a debate that Ask Yourself had with Red Bad Media on Discord yesterday. And this should help you understand, for those of you who have followed my videos on hashtag name the trait. And if you haven't, the playlist will be popping up. If you're interested, check it out. And even if you're not, and you're interested in logic, you might find this video of value. It may help you be logically consistent in your debates or conversations with people, or point out how they're not logically consistent. But anyway, I'm going to critique this debate and point out exactly how Isaac is logically inconsistent many times over, and how this name the trait syllogism is really just a cleverly designed trick and a fallacy that gaslights the opponents in this, if they agree to participate in this sort of debate using this cleverly designed trick without understanding how the trick works. So for those of you who still don't get it, or for those of you that are Ask Yourself sycophants, you're probably a lost soul. But if you have intellectual integrity and you're actually interested in truth and logic, you will find this video of value. Here we go.
Hey guys. Alright, so this is just a little debate that took place in Discord. Normally they happen in the debate crucible where we don't record, but this particular guy, Red Bat Media, wanted to get a debate recorded for his channel, so everyone went into the recording room. He talked with the Discord for about half an hour before I came in, so I'm just going to play the segment where I talk with him. If you want to see the rest, I'll link it down below. I felt it was a good conversation, so why not upload? Not good in the sense of really philosophically intense or complicated or anything. Just, it felt like an honest conversation. Okay, here we go. Enjoy.
Well, yeah, we'll see. It felt like an honest come on, man. Can you stop?
Okay, I want to ask you one. So, you say that...
So here's the problem. First and foremost, we're jumping in the middle of the conversation. Or at the very least, the whole syllogism, the two premises and the inevitable conclusion. It's not all in front of us, right? We don't know what the first premise is unless you're very familiar with the argument. And I think it's, like I've been saying, it's very important to have this very first premise and keep it in mind, because this argument always goes back to it, right? Or it should at the very least. So I don't know if Ask Yourself is jumping in the middle without presenting the very first premise, without which the argument doesn't work, right? This premise has to hold true throughout the entire argument for him to be logically consistent, and for the conclusion to follow from the premises, right? But if you're just going to jump in the middle of the conversation and you don't have this first premise in mind, it makes the trick even that much trickier, right? Humans, but keep in mind, the entire argument, name the trait argument, relies on the first premise, which is humans are of moral value, period. Retarded humans, humans in a coma, dead humans, right? As long as it's a human, it has moral value, period. Here we go.
The basis for morality is being able to reciprocate value with you, correct?
So Red Bat Media is now just going straight into playing naming the trait, right? The second premise. So his trait is being able to reciprocate value. In other words, we don't eat murder and eat people because they could reciprocate value. Social contract, basically. And the reason why we do eat animals is because they don't reciprocate value, right? An animal could or could not kill you, and it won't go to prison, right? You know what I mean? We don't expect this animal to know and respect the social contract. It is what it is, right? They're not part of our social contract. So that's why it's okay to eat them.
Sort of like conventional ethics, I would say.
Yeah, so it's their ability to reciprocate ethics with you, correct?
Um, doesn't
I just
necessarily have to
repeated
be with.
exactly what you said.
Oh yeah, I would say it's their ability to reciprocate ethics with other humans. If I lose the ability to reciprocate ethics, then I wouldn't have any problem if somebody killed me.
Okay, so I'll just point out the reductio for that position. So since you're not placing any value on sentience, you're going to end up justifying an infinite holocaust of infinite sentience. So if you picture something like, for example, the universe box, we transport your family, all your loved ones, everyone else into it. Now they can't reciprocate value anymore, but they're still sentient beings with a desire to live. By your ethical system, it would be fine to holocaust all of them.
Um,
See, these hypothetical examples, like they have to. I don't see too much value in a lot of them. Some of them there's value in, but a lot of them are just so out of this world, literally, that it just doesn't make any sense. Look, if he's in this universe box where he's out of reach of humanity, basically, and he can't reciprocate value, right? There's no possible way he could even engage in a social contract, seeing as he's been removed out of society. Well, yeah, of course it's okay for them to kill them. To, but how are they going to kill him when they're not part of the, when they're completely separate? You know what I mean? So this example, it's just really disingenuous, and it doesn't really lead to anywhere. You know what I mean? How are they going to kill you? How are they going to even, for them to come into your sphere, then we have to see if they want to reciprocate value, right? For them to even be able to come into your sphere. But because you remove them completely out of your sphere of influence and their sphere of influence, this hypothetical example doesn't make any sense. It's silly.
In fact, your system actually would justify, in theory, an infinite holocaust of infinite sentience, so long as you remove the trait ability to reciprocate, even if
That doesn't make any sense.
beings are not causing any harm. So I think most people would reject that as just completely retarded.
That's an appeal to authority, which he has a problem if you do it, but it's okay for him to do that, right? Because most people would, you know, reject you. That means I'm right. No, it doesn't.
uh,
Not to mention that the whole argument doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't.
for the so let me get this. There's a box with, and there all the humans in the world except for me. Is that the scenario? Not sure I understood that.
Right? He needs the example is so absurd. He really needs ask yourself to clarify.
Yeah, basically just that, but more specifically, all your loved ones. By the way, Isaac, just real quick, he basically said something equivocal to, yeah, he'd allow that to happen earlier.
Yeah, he
So,
basically
yeah,
said we
he's
can
he's
open
okay with
Auschwitz
that.
for it.
He made
And now they're engaging in a whole bunch of non sequiturs. Like he basically said Auschwitz would be okay. No, he didn't, because Auschwitz was, it happened in society, and that's that. You you took this hypothetical example where they're no longer in society, which means they cannot reciprocate social contract, which but it also means that you can't kill them because they're out of reach. So, Jesus, these
basically said that we could kill all his loved ones if he died. So, I mean,
That that's assuming that there's
he didn't say that.
nobody
oh
else
yeah,
who wants them
yeah,
alive, and that they can't reciprocate any sort of moral values. There's a
yeah. Like
lot.
basically, if everyone stopped caring about them, it's like yeah, they was just like fucking
There's a lot of variables baked into that.
Yeah, okay, my bad, my bad. Yeah.
So for
These guys are idiots, man. That's why he's able to trick them, because they're just a bunch of morons, man.
the universe box thing, I would say that since the people in it are still humans who are still able to give ethical consideration, even though they're not able to impact upon my life, they are able to at least.
There you go. Red Bat just called them out on it, right? They're still human. the first premise of the argument is humans are of moral value. It doesn't matter what you do to them, they're still human. So because they're of moral value, you cannot do anything to them. Not that you could physically anyway, because you put them in a fucking universe box. I mean, this is philosophy? This is gibberish, people.
Consider other people's well-being ethically, it would be unethical to destroy the universe box.
But he removed that variable. He said people that can't reciprocate well-being or
Wait.
care about well-being.
Wait, the people in the box can't reciprocate any well-being?
Yeah, because that's the justification he gave.
Like,
yeah,
not,
no,
not,
Isaac's thing is basically they can't reciprocate moral value to you, but I know that Red Bat Media is okay with them being able to reciprocate it towards each other.
yeah, if they're able to
So,
reciprocate it
presuming
towards
they
each
can't
other.
do that either.
Okay, another thing. Let's make this more simple.
Yeah, so,
let's
so just with the box, I've put a picture in general chat. So yeah, if it's about reciprocation, your system would justify an infinite holocaust of infinite sentience. You're just trying to warp the hypothetical by making it
No, it wouldn't.
so they can still reciprocate. No, the hypothetical is specifically that they can't reciprocate. If we need to get specific, you can put them all in their own universe box with other simulations in it instead of other people, so they can't reciprocate with each other either. Now, if you're ultimately going to say it's not about their ability to reciprocate, because that's removed by the hypothetical, it's about their cognitive level, then that's not going to justify the infinite holocaust of infinite sentience. That's just going to justify an infinite holocaust of low sentience people. So you have to be clear about what you're actually.
So now he's trying to get him to name a different trait. He wants to move past this. He doesn't even want to discuss this any longer because it's so absurd, right? If Red Bat keeps contesting him on it, he'll eventually expose how absurd that whole idea of the universe box is. So because he's a very clever debater and a good trickster, ask yourself, just moves the debate along and suggests that Red Bat should use a different trait that's maybe a little less evil to you know what I mean? I mean, this is absurd. He's manipulating him.
That is there. Is it the ability to reciprocate, or is it having a certain level of intelligence?
It's specifically being able to reciprocate ethical consideration towards other humans.
Yep, so that's removed. So your system would justify an infinite holocaust of infinite sentience. So do you bite the bullet on that conclusion?
Infinite holocaust of infinite sentience. How did you even get to this infinite when it was just his family in the box, right? How would that... It makes zero sense.
Or do you contradict yourself?
So justifying
And then he's, putting him at a crossroads. Do you agree, or are you a bad person, basically, right? Or do you disagree, or you're a bad person? When, if that were me in the debate, I would be, well, we would never even get that far. But, come on, Isaac, don't be scared. But I would shatter his whole universe box hypothetical as just a bunch of fucking nonsense.
Holocaust of people are unable to reciprocate any towards more of any towards.
And do notice how he uses sophistry by likening killing, him and his family. He extrapolated that somehow. I don't know how he made that logical leap. I guess it would entail a bunch of universe boxes. And if you put entire humanity in all these universe boxes, who's going to be killing who and how are they going to do it? It's just such a nonsense argument. But notice how he likened it to Holocaust, right? Because that pulls on people's heartstrings. Oh, you're a bad person. You support Holocaust. Complete non sequitur, sophistry. It's just bullshit.
Not just people. We're talking about, at this point, vastly more valuable beings than humans. Because the problem with what you're doing is you're not putting any value on sentience. If you're not putting value on sentience...
He's trying to steer him where he wants him to go, right? He wants him to respect sentience, to say that sentience is the trait, right, that makes it not okay for us to kill animals because we both possess it and plants don't, so it makes it okay to eat plants, right? He's trying to steer him to use sentience, but sentience doesn't work either. It's nonsense.
Then there's always going to be a hypothetical where we abstract out the thing that you're putting value on, and we just have sentient beings. So we can create a hypothetical where we actually scale their sentience up infinitely to a point that you're talking about destroying an infinite amount of infinitely sentient beings. And if you just try to picture an infinitely sentient being, I mean, just picture everything you value about your own consciousness, your capacity for love, your emotional states, your ability to experience awe at the universe, all of these things, they're just amplified 1,000-fold. This being's...
He's manipulating him emotionally right now. All the good feelings that you've ever had, multiply that by 1,000,000, and then you have this imaginary being that I created, and then you'd still say it's okay to kill that being. You know what I mean? When it's like, what? What are you talking about? Like, he's completely leading this conversation, and Red Bat is just, you know, he just doesn't know how to debate.
Resting state is the kind of state that a human experiences once in its life, like some transcendental bliss or something like this. So if you're not saying that sentience is the basis for value, your system is going to justify an infinite holocaust, not just of humans, but of infinitely sentient beings. Now, if you're going to try to get around that and say it's actually about their level of intelligence, then it's just going to justify an infinite holocaust of lower sentience beings. So
right, so he knows how the trick works, obviously. No matter what you plug in, it's not going to work, right? Because humanity, the reason why it's okay for us to eat animals is because we have a ton of different traits. It's not just sentience, it's not just intelligence, it's not just the ability to reciprocate social contract, it's not just the fact that we have families that care about us, it's not just that people we don't even know care about us and our rights, right? It's a lot of different things that animals cannot participate in, do not possess, right? This is why name the trait is a fallacy, because it reduces humanity, or the difference between people and animals, to one single trait. When the actual factual, and this is how simple this shit is, the actual factual difference between humans and animals, I mean, it's humanity which encapsulates a whole bunch of different traits. So it's absurd to reduce the difference between humans and animals to one single trait. That's why name the trait is a trick and it doesn't work. It's the fallacy of a single cause, right? It's a logical fallacy. More on that later.
is it about their intelligence level, or is it about their ability to reciprocate?
It's specifically about their ability to reciprocate towards other humans. So
okay. Yep.
So ask yourself, is trying to lead him down a path that's easier for him to debunk and debate when Bat Media is sticking to social contract.
And okay, yeah. So then that would justify an infinite holocaust of infinite sentience. Do you bite the bullet on that conclusion?
Destroy.
No, it wouldn't justify anything, because we agreed in the very beginning that humans are of moral value, right? So you can't just... What Isaac is doing is he's saying that humans are of moral value and humans aren't of moral value, right? That's exactly what he's saying, because there already exist humans that have no sentience, right? A dead body doesn't feel anything, has no objective reality anymore, but it's still a human. We still respect that dead body, right? Why? Well, because of social contract, because of family ties, because of a lot of different things, because it's a human. That's why we even though it has no sentience, we still respect that human, right? Because even though it's dead, it is still a human. It's just a dead human, right? Of course. So it's completely logically inconsistent for Isaac to say, well, sentience is the trait, right? So that makes it okay, basically under Isaac's moral framework, right? If sentience is the trait, it's okay to eat dead people, right? It's okay to eat people that are in terminal coma. It's okay to eat people that are basically vegetables. That's in his moral system. And if you take the same sort of quote unquote reasoning that he uses, or you start appealing to majority, most people would not be okay with eating dead people. So you can see how Isaac's position of sentience gets reduced to absurdity no less than Red Bat's position of, if he were to take the position of intelligence or whatever else he was trying to push onto him, right? They both lead to absurdity. They both do. Why? Because it's just a trick. Because it employs a logical fallacy that ultimately gets you to say that humans are and aren't of moral value at the same time. Okay? And that's logical inconsistence. This is how simple this shit is. But let's see if Red Bat wants to defend, whatchamacallit, the social contract.
Infinite sentience that are unable to reciprocate human ethical consideration? Sure.
Yeah, but they're unable to reciprocate because they're in the universe box. They're incapable of reciprocating with you.
Wait, so they're incapable even if they were removed from the universe box?
That's saying if they're not in the hypothetical. That's just you changing the situation. If you're going to say it's about what they would be capable of doing, you're talking about their intelligence level.
I would say that because I wouldn't think that they'd necessarily give us ethical consideration. We shouldn't have any ethical consideration towards them. But I still would.
We're talking about an infinite amount of infinitely in any way, so they can't have.
I'm gonna just fast forward this because they're going in circles.
Don't have any ability to reciprocate your value box. So to destroy an infinite amount of.
From a moral standpoint, it's neutral, but again, I'd have other reasons to worry about somebody who would destroy it.
Okay, wait.
Here we go.
Destroy an infinite amount of infinitely sentient beings.
I would say that from a moral standpoint, it's neutral, but again, I'd have other reasons to worry about somebody who would destroy.
Okay, so this is where Red Bat actually begins to understand the trick, right? Because he says, wait, that's not the only reason why we wouldn't kill these people, right? And Ask Yourself is going to jump in and talk over him, right? Because he doesn't want him to go that route. He doesn't want him to go the humanity route. Why? Because it exposes the trick for the fallacy of the single cause that it is. So Red Bat recognizes that there are more than one reason, more than one cause, and that it's a fallacy to reduce humanity to a single trait, right? He doesn't fully get it, but he's starting, wheels are churning in his head, and he's starting to understand the problem with name the trait. And Isaac takes control of the conversation because he wants to take things off the table, right? If you saw my review of his debate with Blair White, his entire philosophy depends on reducing everything to one single thing, because it's easy to debunk one single thing once you disregard all these other realities, right?
Okay, wait. No. I really hate when people give Weasley answers like,
That's not a Weasley answer at all. He's just manipulating him.
But I have some reason for not. No, it's what does your ethical system support? I don't care about whatever you say after.
That is what his ethical system supports, because he said that humans are of moral value. Now, if in the very beginning you would have heard them talking about this, and maybe Red Bat would have given reasons why in his ethical system he believes humans are of moral value. Had he known how the trick works, he would have said, well, I believe humans are of moral value because of all these different traits, right? And now he's realizing, wait a minute, humans are of moral value exactly because of all these different traits, not just one trait. But Isaac is trying to trick him into thinking that he's being morally inconsistent when he's actually being morally consistent. And Isaac is the one who's being intellectually dishonest and inconsistent.
It's morally neutral. So if you're going to say that it's morally neutral to Holocaust infinite sentience, at that point, you've lost virtually everyone. Now, if you're just aiming for just being autistic, sitting on the periphery of society with a logically consistent position that no one accepts, you can do that. You can, Hannibal has a...
This is just a whole bunch of sophistry, man. It's just a bunch of bullshit. Emotional appeals, misrepresenting what he says, not letting him speak. It's just sophistry.
Logically consistent position. You could hold a logically consistent position of I just don't value anything. There's tons of logically consistent positions that no one will accept. So if you're going to say my basis for moral consideration is value reciprocation,
and the whole argument the way he designed name the trait is to prove that you're morally inconsistent within your own framework. And even though that doesn't work, as I just explained, you know, even if you choose to remain logically consistent within this illogical argument, he will then appeal to authority, or sorry, make an appeal to popularity. He'll say, well, most people would disagree with you, right? Acting as if you're trying to make you a bad person, when most people would disagree with eating dead people because they can't feel anything too. Most people would disagree with your position as well, Isaac, which is, again, that's why he shifts the burden of proof. That's why he controls the situation and the conversation, is because he doesn't want to answer these questions. He's constantly on the offensive. He has to be, because if you put him on the defensive, you'll expose him within this illogical framework that is named the trait. You'll expose him, but more importantly, you'll expose the trick for the bullshit that it is.
Where beings can't reciprocate values, saying, you know, it's either good or morally neutral or anything other than morally wrong to kill those beings. You can be consistent if you want to do that, but everyone is going to reject your system as just completely retarded, and you won't be able to persuade anyone. So just to be totally clear, you do bite the bullet. You say it is morally neutral to holocaust infinite sentience.
Remove
Non sequitur and appeal to authority. Popularity, sorry.
from any other circumstance? Yes.
Yeah, but you're trying to hedge your answer. You're trying to make...
He's not hedging his answer. He's talking about the fact that humans are of moral value for a lot of different reasons. He's not hedging anything. He's being logically consistent. And Isaac is mentally raping this poor guy.
sound not as retarded as it is. So we're just getting at what your...
He just called him retarded too, right? This is what he does. He appeals to... He's just a sophist, basically. There's no logic in his arguments. He's just a sophist. He's, insulting his opponent, saying that his position is laughable, when you actually have to prove that it is. You can't just say, ha ha ha, that's a laughable, position. Right, guys? Right? It's an appeal to popularity again, and it's sophistry. And he won't let the guy speak.
Your moral system says, okay? So by your moral system, it's just a yes or a no question. It is fine to holocaust infinite sentience. Yes.
No, it's not fine, because humans are of moral value.
Or no?
Yes.
Okay, so most people will...
So he just manipulated him, even though Red Bat, right, he hammered him into a corner, which is exactly how he describes his debating strategy, hammering people into a corner, right?
Reject your system as completely insane at that point. And just to point out why, most people would understand that the Jewish Holocaust was extremely immoral, 11 million people or whatever.
Oh, it's 11 now? Because if you go to Poland, it says 1.5. But hey, ain't that where it happened, mostly? Anyway, moving right along. I think Isaac is Jewish. Just a hint.
That was, most people would...
Or just a hunch, rather, based on the little hints that he drops. Oh, he's talking about the Holocaust and Jews and Nazis, while calling himself the vegan Führer on his Discord. Funny shit. But I'm going to stop editorializing. Let's go.
Recognize that, the Holodomor or any of these other Holocausts or genocides that have taken place are immoral. So what your system justifies is something that is infinitely worse than all of those systems put together. So, yeah, I rest my...
No, it doesn't, and we already covered that. It's absurd.
case.
I give another argument.
So now he's going to use a different variable or plug in a different trait, right? They're going to keep playing this game, going in circles.
So what if if I change my axiom, let's say instead of
well, wait 1 sec. No. If you're gonna change your axiom, you need to actually say, okay, that I don't... And look, we don't mind. People change their views. Lots of people come in carnist and go vegan in here. But what I really don't like is when people throw up arguments and then they're ambiguous about whether they're holding them or not, and then they move between them. If you want to go to another axiom...
See, this is exactly what he's doing. He wants to reduce humanity to one single cause, because he knows he has a guy who's experiencing cognitive dissonance and not quite understanding why, but Isaac wants to make sure to take the previous argument off the table and once again reduce humanity to a single trait, albeit a different one, right? Once you start putting these traits together, which is what you should do because humans are of moral value, and what makes a human is not just their sentience or their intelligence, it's a lot of different things, which is why humans are of moral value, right? He has to reduce this shit to, this is, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit pissed off because this guy is so intellectually dishonest and so manipulative.
Then you need to actually spell out that you are no longer holding this one. So, I mean, if you're going to say, okay, I didn't realize it leads to an infinite holocaust of infinite sentience, probably a bad idea, I want to go to something else, then that's fine. So are you actually taking that off the table, or are you holding to it?
I'd say
because if you're holding to it, there's no need to even talk about anything else. Your position again.
You see, he doesn't want humanity to be conceived of as what it is. A lot of different traits. He just wants to talk about, he wants to extrapolate or extract rather one single trait.
Veganism is perfectly consistent.
Veganism is perfectly consistent. Not your particular brand of veganism. It's a joke.
in case this comes up, I guess I'd have to change my axiom. So yeah, I guess I'd have to change.
Okay, but you kind of hedged it a bit right there by saying in case this comes up. So I'm very sensitive to language. Whenever I notice a hedge.
Right, he's so aware of what the problem is. And maybe he just became aware of the problem in his argumentative strategy because he watched my video where I exposed the fallacy thereof. Maybe that's why. But he's really adamant about just arguing against one single trait, encapsulating humanity, or the difference between people and pigs or cows or whatever.
I just asked the person clearly again. So are you actually dropping this axiom, or do you still hold it? Is it about value reciprocation or not?
No, not anymore.
See, this is the thing, because even if you just only choose 2 traits instead of 1, and it's obviously it's many, many more than that, but if you just do 2, the trick doesn't work anymore. It's indefensible, right? So he has to hammer you into a corner.
Okay, fair enough. So I'll let you move on to your other one.
Alright, so...
Respect the intellectual honesty there, though.
Alright.
This guy's so slimy, man. Intellectual honesty. Where's your intellectual honesty, dude? Debate me, coward.
So what if we valued instead, like, how do I put this in the words? Similarities in ethical consideration. For example, it would apply to non-humans if another sentient race were able to give ethical consideration to each other in a way that resembles humans' ethical consideration, then I would say it would be morally unjustified to destroy the universe box.
Yeah, so there's kind of 2 things there. So there's one component that's reasonable and there's one that's not. So you're not fully getting the analogy, because what you're doing right there is not actually giving something that in principle goes against the conclusion of that analogy. You're actually trying to change the analogy, and you're saying, okay, well, what if they can like reciprocate with each other or something like this, or so you can just abstract that out by just saying, okay, the universe box contains infinite individual universes with one sentient.
I'm just gonna fast forward through this because it's really kind of off topic.
In all of get you around the point. Going for something like similar ethical consideration to us, it's like you mean something that doesn't pose a fucking threat to you. Now, if you want to say that, I would be fine with that, but that would cover animals.
Well, I would say that they wouldn't pose a moral threat to each other either.
Yeah, I mean, if conscious ability to reciprocate or something like this, or some real world ability to reciprocate, those are things that won't lead to veganism, but those have their own absurdities. If you're just going to talk about, something along the lines of like whether that being is going to cause problems for me or other beings, that's totally reasonable. Like most vegans would say, if a bear attacked, are you saying that it's about their whether or not they are posing some kind of threat to you. Is that the core thing you're getting at, or is it actually about a...
Did have a system of
That really doesn't make much sense. It's a rabbit hole I don't feel like going down.
ethics, but it was very rudimentary. I wouldn't give them the same level of ethical consideration that I would...
The position that moral consideration for every being should be equal. That's not the position that any rational being holds. So just to be clear, I mean, if we care about well-being, it seems only logical to value beings in accordance with their capacity to manifest well-being. So, I mean, an ant, for example, is going to live for orders of magnitude.
I wouldn't give them the same...
Okay, so now Isaac, because there are problems with him using sentience as the trait, right? And I believe Red Bat is a smart guy. He asks a lot of the right questions, actually. I believe I skipped through it, but I listened to the debate prior to this, and what he asked was, okay, well, if sentience is, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, if sentience is the trait, how do you quantify sentience, right? How do you measure sentience? Like, what is it? Just any sentience, or what is it, right? Well, if you just say sentience, then that is your trait. You can't say 5 milligrams of sentience or 8 universe box units of sentience, right? You can no longer put quantity on sentience because you made a universal claim that it's sentience. So if anything has sentience, that's it. It's sentient, period, right? But this is the problem with something like sentience, because it's not only is it difficult to observe in a lot of animals such as bivalves, for example, or mollusks, barnacles, a lot of sea creatures that don't seem very sentient. And then there are certain plants that we're not sure. Maybe they're sentient too, right? We just haven't been able to prove that they are. But there's some groundbreaking research that is starting to take you down this path that could potentially lead in one day proving or being able to deduce that plants have sentience. Actually, certain plants do. But anyway, Red Bat is asking the right questions. Like, you're saying sentience, so how do you quantify it, right? If you say it exists, you should be able to quantify it. But that's a difficult question. But what Ask Yourself is going to do is he's going to move the goalpost, because all of a sudden it's going to become about degrees of sentience, right? And that's a fallacy. If you said sentience, you didn't say degrees of sentience. And why didn't you say that? Because if you say degrees of sentience, and this is why name the trait doesn't work, man, because it's just absurd. If you say degrees of sentience, then who are you to decide where that line, where sentience begins or ends, or where it's okay to eat a somewhat sentient being because they're less sentient, right? He's playing a game. He's moving the goalposts. Look, if it's sentient, if your trait is sentience, then that's it. That is the trait. You didn't say levels of sentience, right? You didn't quantify sentience. And that's the problem. You can't all of a sudden start quantifying sentience because you just moved the goalpost, which is a fallacy. You changed your axiom. That's exactly what he did. He's now changing his axiom because he's not intellectually honest.
Level of ethical consideration that I would give a human. But in this analogy, I have to...
And again, this becomes a problem because, fetuses aren't sentient up until maybe like 20th week of pregnancy, I think. We could reasonably, it's debatable, don't get me wrong, we could debate this, but we're starting to see signs of sentience at about that age, right? And the more it goes, the more they develop, the more sentient they become. And there is a point when they're in the womb and they're already sentient. It could be argued anyway. Now, definitely more sentient than a fish, right? But I guarantee you, Ask Yourself is okay with abortion at any point during the pregnancy, and that's law in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. And I guarantee you he's okay with that because, well, I won't speculate too much on that. But anyway, I've heard enough of his debates to know what his stance is, right? So for him, it becomes problematic using sentience because he would be against eating fish or even less sentient beings like a barnacle or a sea snail or something, right? He would be against eating that because that's not vegan, but he's completely okay with aborting fetuses all the way up to, 8.5 months in the womb, even though they're more sentient than. And the problem with that is not only it's absurd, it's completely absurd to be not okay with eating fish that barely feels anything and probably doesn't have any sort of conscious awareness of its existence, right? That has no objective reality, probably. We don't really know. It's kind of a wishy-washy area, right? But for him, right, it would be okay to abort a fetus, but not okay to eat fish. That's a completely inconsistent position, even when it comes to sentience. Not only that, but it's a position that most of this world would disagree with, right? So if you're going to appeal to authority when he says something that's absurd that you forced him into saying, how does sentience not get reduced to absurdity? When you say it's okay to abort fetuses, but not okay to eat a bivalve sea creature that doesn't feel and is not, aware of its reality, it's completely absurd. And most people, if that is going to be an argument, wouldn't agree with that anyway. They would think that you're crazy. Sorry, retarded.
Some ethical consideration to just about everything that's conscious. It's just they wouldn't be the same level of consideration.
Okay, I'm still not clear on what you're saying, because we would give moral consideration to anything that's conscious, but not on the same level. I mean, if you think that vegans hold the position that moral consideration for every being should be equal, that's not the position that any rational vegan holds. So just to be clear, I mean, if we care about
he doesn't know this. He's just speculating. He's acting like he's the spokesperson for all vegans out there. He doesn't know this.
It seems only logical to value beings in accordance with their capacity to manifest well-being. So, I mean, an ant, for example, is going to live for...
Right, but if that's the case, right, if different types of sentience should be valued differently, then not only did you just move the goalpost, but you completely invalidated your sentience argument in the first place. Because who are you to say where that line lies? Maybe I put that line, whatever that is, we could do enough studies and be able to somehow quantify the sentience, and we could draw a clear line where every human is going to be included on one side and most animals, or at least the animals we want to eat, are going to be on the other side. I could draw that arbitrary line too, right? Why is the way you define and value sentience the way we should go? Why can't I define? It's absurd. The whole argument is absurd.
For orders of magnitude less long than a human and experience conscious states
orders of magnitude. Okay, what are these orders? What is this magnitude? Can you quantify sentience? You can't be making these statements about an abstract concept like sentience and acting as if you could put it on the scale and weigh it. This is completely intellectually dishonest.
Of magnitude less meaningful and beautiful, and it's easy to tell that a human life is better than an ant life, because I can just ask you, if you had a choice to live as either an ant or a human, which would you pick?
Well, right, if an ant's life is less valuable, then it's okay to eat, or less sentient, by orders of magnitude, whatever that means, then it's okay to eat ants. But you could say the same thing about a cow. It's a lot less sentient, and that's a fact. It's a lot less sentient than a human being. A cow will look at another cow getting slaughtered, and it won't think anything of it. I know goats for a fact do. I know this for a fact from personal experience. They won't think anything of it. They'll walk up to it hanging there being skinned, and they'll sniff it. And they'll just go about their day like nothing's happening. Okay? Human beings, on the other hand, if you were to do that to another human being and have other human beings look at that, they would feel a lot of different things that animals don't feel, or that we can't say that they do, because they don't act in the way that humans do. So let me draw this. Now that we're talking about quantity of sentience, I can draw the line where I want. His line ends at animals, right? And begins at plants, or the dividing line is between plants and animals, because he says so. I could draw that line between You know what I mean? This is how arbitrary and nonsensical this is, because I could draw this line just the same between animals and humans.
So we would also extend value to all beings, and we would do that with, we'd give them different levels.
We would extend value to all beings. He just introduced another axiom, right? Beings, life, or being. Like that's no longer sentience. That's another quality, right? So it's okay for him to add other variables and name other traits, but Redback cannot, right? Sentience and being are not exactly the same.
Of value in accordance with their capacity for well-being. So that right there is totally fine, but I'm still a bit weirded out. When you say it's about their similarity to human ethics, are you saying it's about an individual being having a moral system that they can actually conceptualize in their brain that's sufficiently similar to ours?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not about whether they actually are reciprocating in practice. So it's more about their actual cognitive ability.
Yeah, the potential to develop an ethical set of values similar to.
So now Red Bat is going off social contract, right? People that engage in the social contract actively. And now he's talking about the potential, the ability to reciprocate social contract. And that one's easy to defeat because you're still playing the game.
That of a human. I
Yeah, okay,
think
so
this would require.
that would get you out of the insane.
That's why he just jumps all over it, because he already knows what he knows what all the answers are, because it's just a trick, guys.
Kind of place you were in a minute ago with the universe box, because then you can say, well, if it's about the actual consciousness level, basically, or the moral system forming ability of those individual beings. It's not about their actual capacity for reciprocation. So then you're not trapped by a situation that just abstracts out the quality ability to reciprocate, but you end up in similarly bad, maybe not as bad, but still pretty bad situations with that. So, for example, there's humans who can't do this. So you would have to bite the bullet on saying that it's fine to Holocaust retarded people. At least a certain retarded people.
Certain type, like if they're like really, really low functioning.
But at the same time, I don't know if you're trying to be dishonest or not. I don't see any reason to
No,
think that. Right?
I'm just trying to figure out what you're saying.
I want to point out what you did right there is a little shady. I'm sure it wasn't intentional, but you implied that their quality of life might be shitty. When you say really low functioning, you picture someone who might be suffering or something like this. No, they're not suffering. They're having a good time. They have a desire to live. It's fine, but they can't conceptualize ethics at a kind of level like us. They just can't think like that.
So I'm trying to visualize what.
Just a retarded person who can you're talking about a human, so someone sentient being capable of well-being, desire to live, etc. But they can't conceptualize ethics at the level that you're talking about. So it would be, by your logic, fine to kill those beings since they can't conceptualize ethics at that, quote, similar level to us.
So in every other way, they're essentially equal to the average person, except for their ability to conceptualize ethics?
Yeah, if that's the quality that you're putting value on, then that's the one that we're going to change. Everything else you can just...
Right? Redback kind of gets it. He gets it. Well, if that's the quality you're putting value on, no. That's not the quality he puts the value on. The value is that, humans are of moral value. Because they're human. You can't... Oh my God. Look, for all of you, ask yourself, sycophants, who still don't get this, you're just being dishonest, okay? Because I'm not going to keep repeating myself, man.
Sure.
Give me a second to think.
Yeah, and I'll just prompt your mind a little bit there. If you immediately go,
I'll just prompt your mind there a little bit. See how he likes to control the conversation and manipulate his opponents? That wouldn't happen with me, ask yourself.
I still feel uncomfortable with that. What that should probably suggest to you is that the thing that you're valuing isn't the thing that you just put value on. It's probably actually some deeper quality. And I'll just guide your thinking a little bit. The thing that you actually...
Guide your thinking a little bit? I mean, can it get any more blatant?
value if you're a cognitively normal human being is sentience.
If you're a cognitively normal human being, I mean, these loaded statements, this is all pure sophistry. It has nothing to do with logic or philosophy. It's, well, I mean, I guess sophistry as a branch of philosophy, if that's possible. So if you disagree with what I say, you're just a bad person. That's essentially his entire argument.
Beings. But the problem with that, it's such a basic, it's such an obvious moral position, and everyone agrees with it. But the problem with it is that it does lead to veganism.
Well, we do.
It does lead to veganism. Some vegan out there, when I said that Isaac uses name the trait to make people go vegan, he somehow struggled with understanding that. Okay, buddy.
Empathize with non-sentient beings. Like, let's say there's a robot that was meant to look as human as possible. If somebody cut the head off that robot, you'd cringe a little bit.
Yes, okay, but there's a slight difference there.
I'm impressed by Red Bat. I mean, I think he's a kid, and he hasn't really thought this through, but he's kind of on the right track, even though he doesn't quite maybe understand what he's doing. But it's very intuitive, like, and it's evolutionary in us to, at least to some degree, respect some human beings, right? Like, we understand why we need to do this on an unconscious, innate level, right? So the robot example is it's pretty interesting. So let's hear what they have to say.
That is just tripping up your natural sort of biological empathy wiring because it looks sufficiently similar to a human to generate a response in a creature that's evolved.
Bam. It looks sufficiently enough to a human, right? So just by looking at this thing that looks like a human, we basically project who we are onto them, right? And who we are isn't just sentience. I mean, it's the way we look, it's the way we talk, it's the way we react to one another, how we smile when somebody says something funny, it's how we communicate. It's all these things, right? But look how he's going to slickly reduce it to, well, it's just sentience.
To hold, ethical concerns towards human beings. But if we actually spell out to you that being is 100% certainly not conscious, there is nothing going on there.
You don't need to spell that out. Everybody already knows that robots, unless they're 5 years old, but anybody that's, certain mental age already understands that robots can't feel. Like, you don't have to spell this out.
Programming. We truly know that. There's absolutely no chance it's anything else. No rational person would say that being has moral value. By that logic, it would be, why would a rock doesn't have moral value because it's not sentient? It would be very strange to say some non-sentient things just have value. So you would agree that even if that would trip up your emotional wiring, if you concretely knew it was not sentient, you wouldn't actually care about it upon reflection.
See how he reduces it to sentience. We already know robots aren't sentient. That's not why we may or may not feel empathy, if only for a split moment, because of sentience. That's not why. It's because when we look at a robot that's anthropomorphized, looks like a human being, it's as if we were looking in a mirror. We see another human being, and with that human being, if only it's our mind playing a trick on us, we see a whole gang of traits. It's not just sentience, right? We clearly know this thing doesn't feel. We know this. You don't have to tell us this. But there's something about them. We see ourselves in them, and we see all of ourselves in them. And it's an evolutionary, this sort of response it evolved in us to be so. It's innate, right? And it has very little to do with sentience, actually.
So our brain tricks us into empathizing. Is that what you're saying?
If there's something that's not sentient but looks enough like a human, it will.
It doesn't make any sense. Why would you empathize with a human-like robot? Is it in pain? Is it suffering? Are you seeing, like, why would you empathize, right? Why would you empathize with that thing? Maybe because Yeah, I don't understand why you would immediately go to empathy unless you want to go to sentience. It's not empathy. It's amazement. It's bemusement looking at this thing that's, so much like us and yet different. We're trying to wrap our head around what's the difference. And one thing we know for sure is that it can't feel and that it can't understand. That we already know. We know that right off the bat, that the thing can't feel because it's just a robot. So he's just manipulating this guy and saying that you feel who feels empathy for a robot? Who? And why? It doesn't make any sense. It's completely illogical.
Trigger an emotional response in you. If you are then told this thing is not sentient and you know that concretely,
I mean, maybe if the robot was getting its head cut off and it was programmed to react like a human reacts, okay, then we might feel empathy for but just looking at a robot, we don't feel empathy for it. For what reason?
and a rational person would look at their reaction and go, okay, well, it triggered my natural, biological empathy wiring, but do I actually care? No, I don't care. It's not conscious, it's not suffering, it's not experiencing anything.
True.
Once again, he reduced all of humanity to sentience, right?
All right, so back to
Or did he just use two axioms, sentience and empathy? So even Isaac himself is inconsistent all the time.
To go back exactly to what you said before, if we can abstract out these qualities that you try to put value on, like you say it's reciprocation, we abstract that out, you still feel like there's something valuable about the beings that can't reciprocate. So okay, it's probably not about reciprocation. Then you say it's about holding, being able to conceptualize ethics at a similar level to us. We abstract that out, you still feel it's wrong to kill some beings that don't have that property that you place the value on. That suggests that it's probably not that property either. So I'm just telling you the property is going to be sentience, but you can keep trying to find.
It's not going to be sentience because then if it is sentience, it's okay to eat dead bodies or people in vegetative state, right? And that reduces your position to absurdity as well, just because it's just a trick.
Other things to put value on. But no matter what, just so you see the pattern of what's happening here, our response is just going to be to abstract out the quality that you're saying you put value on and then to keep sentience. And if the quality doesn't relate to sentience at all, to actually ram sentience up infinitely and then ask you if you're comfortable with killing it.
what about the possibility of there being tiers of life?
Possibility. It's a fact. I mean, tiers in what sense? Are you talking about brain complexity, like complexity of conscious experience?
I mean, like, we generally don't consider insects to be as valuable as, say, dogs, for example.
I'm just getting a photo for you. Just 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any rational vegan who cares about well-being would be
all these loaded statements. Any rational vegan, because I say so, who cares about sentience, because I say so.
Well, as far as I can tell, would be logically committed to the position that beings have different levels of value based on their capacity to manifest well-being. So,
right, that's moving the goalpost. All of a sudden, once again, it's about levels of sentience. Is it about sentience or is it about levels of sentience? Because if it's about levels of sentience, I could set that level arbitrarily just the way you do, where it's okay to eat animals. Simple.
Exactly what you're getting at, but when you say, tiers of life, yeah, I mean, we would say like an insect is less valuable than a dog, is less valuable than a primate, is less valuable than a human. And an easy way to tell which you think has the most value is just to ask, which being would I rather experience a life as?
That's not true. Because me personally, if I were to be an animal, it would be something like an eagle, right? A bird. And you could argue that according to this sentience, because it's so easy to measure this sentience, right? And it's so easy to quantify it, Isaac, isn't it? And he would say this, I'm sure, because he just said he seems to think that apes are, closer on the sentient scale to humans, and that makes sense, right? He would say that he would probably want to be an ape if you put that on him. I would rather be an eagle because I value flying more than sentience. Obviously, I'd be a sentient being, but being able to fly, fuck yeah. Fuck yeah. Not having any natural predators? Fuck yeah, give it to me. I'd be an eagle all day, every day, even though it's less sentient than a chimp. So you could talk about what you think rational vegans would choose. It's bullshit. And again, what this illustrates is that you cannot just reduce any being's existence to any single trait like sentience, because, you know, being able to fly is pretty fucking amazing too.
If something has more value than a human, if we say, hey, there's this life form over here, they're just, infinitely more conscious than humans, infinitely more beautiful, their experience is just infinitely more positive, you want to live as that or a human, everyone's going to say,
I don't know why he keeps using this infinite, and maybe it's just an off point, but human brain cannot conceptualize infinity, okay? For starters, we can't even conceptualize what that is. We don't understand infinity. Like in the abstract, we understand that it never ends, but is sentience? Once again, he's putting, he's trying to quantify sentience in some way, shape, or form when you can't do that. When you could barely, in the first place, when it comes to animals, you have to assume that they have sentience, right? You can't prove it, but it's reasonable to assume that they do. It's like the theory of evolution, right? We can't prove it, but it's reasonable, given all the evidence, is reasonable to assume that it's true, right? But just because it's reasonable to assume that it exists in these animals, quantifying it, that's a whole nother logical leap you just took. And that's not logic, bro. It's illogical to do this.
I'd rather live as that thing. So that's an easy way to tell which being has the most value.
All right.
So, sorry, just to respond to your question. So, just as a matter of fact, beings can experience well-being to different degrees, and rational vegans would...
He says it's easy to tell which animals have value, more value, right? But when you actually look at how the real world works, not this fucking retarded vegan universe, and I'm not talking about all vegans, just these retards, like ask yourself, well, how does the world value animals, right? Those that provide our food are very valuable, which is why we protect them and make sure that their genetic line is preserved, right? We refine their genetic lines. Animals that are endangered are also important, more important than other animals perhaps, right? So in the real world, sentience has nothing to do with how we value animals. Most people, Isaac, would disagree with your bullshit. So I guess you're wrong according to your own line of reasoning, right? Of course.
Agree that they have value to different degrees. But that doesn't mean that just because a being can experience less value than you, that it's okay to murder it for no reason.
Would you say it is more evil?
That's an assumption and presumption that all these vegans make when they haven't even met the burden of proof. For no reason. There are lots of reasons why we kill animals, like food being one of them.
To kill a dog than an ant? Based on the...
Yeah, of course.
All right.
I'd say it's more evil to kill like a hyper-sentient alien than a human.
All right, what would you say to the argument?
He would say it's more evil to kill a dog than an ant. Nobody thinks it's evil to kill an ant. Nobody. Not even vegans.
Argument that because plants are alive, there is some value in them being...
Wait, one sec, sorry, I work in a very specific way.
Would you say to the argument that because plants are alive, there is some value in them being...
Wait, one...
Whenever he does this, like, the conversation is going where he doesn't want it to go, right? Because his trick just might get exposed. So Red Bat just added another variable, life.
Sorry, I work in a very specific way. So you're moving now to trying to put value on life or something like that, and we can go there. But first, I would want you to move off that second justification you put up.
Once again, right? Let's reduce humanity to only one thing, because otherwise the trick doesn't work.
Second was being able to conceptualize ethics at a similar level to us. I mean, you're not comfortable killing the retards, etc. So, are we taking that off the table, or do we still need to do work?
Yeah, we're taking that off the table.
Taking it off the table, or like you actually don't believe that makes sense anymore?
Well, I can't defend it, so I have to change my position.
Okay, fair enough.
this was very interesting. He doesn't believe that it's okay to kill retarded people and eat them, right? He knows that it's, but he doesn't understand why he believes that, right? And the reason why he does is because premise one, humans are of moral value. Very simple stuff.
Yeah, and again, I'm just going to remind you every time we switch between them that the sensible one to put value on is sentience, but sometimes you do have to go through a lot of these before you see it. So yeah, lots of things.
He just keeps going in circles with this sentience, when sentience, if you plug it into the equation, once again, that means it's okay to eat people in a coma. That means it's okay to eat people that are dead. That means it's okay to eat people who have been given drugs to a point where they don't even understand that they exist, right? You could numb somebody to a point where they experience no sentience. Inject them with some drugs, and then you can eat them. And another thing, sentience, that means it's okay to eat animals, actually, so long as you provide them with a good life, right? And then you hit them with the hammer over the head where you knock them out, where they don't feel any pain. And then you slash their throat, you have them bleed out before they come to. And bam, no pain. Why can't you do that, right? Why can't you do that? Of course you can. If sentience is the only thing that's valued, even vegans don't believe this bullshit. Then there's nothing wrong with eating eggs. There's nothing wrong with drinking milk, right? Nothing wrong with it. If you just provide these animals with a good, happy life, and in exchange for you providing them with this good, happy life, you take some of their milk, right? It doesn't make any fucking sense.
Are alive. If it's not conscious, I wouldn't. I don't care about bacteria. I don't care about plants. Hummus medical grade. Can you just mute your mic? Yeah, I don't think that you care about bacteria. If it's got no internal experience.
I care about plants. I care about bacteria. Isn't our body basically bacteria, right? And how do you live without plants? Like, I don't care. I don't care. Of course he cares.
Why would you care what happens to it?
Well, I would argue if we assign value to life in general, then
You don't. You can go on, but we don't. Vegans don't.
Vegans don't. Once again, he's a spokesperson for vegans. I mean, this guy is so full of himself. Who elected him? Vegans don't care about life? If you're a vegan and you're watching this video right now, don't run away because you're a fanboy of Ask Yourself. Be honest. I'm going to see what? Like 30 thumbs down on this video? Clearly vegans. So I want to see 30 comments. Do you not care about life since you're a vegan? Come on, let's have some intellectual honesty here, vegans. Let me know if you don't care about life. I'd like to know. Or let me know if you do. Either way, leave a comment. Thank you. He says vegans don't care about life. First of all, that's not true. Second of all, what gives you the right to speak for all vegans out there?
All right. If I assign value to life in general, then I'd have to argue that killing anything would have some degree of...
And yet again, I'm going to give Red Bat credit, even though he's not fully cognizant of what he's doing. He's going to that one trait that encompasses numerous traits, right? With life, or there are a lot of traits that follow from life. He's not really seeing it, but the desire is there, right? Because I believe it's kind of innate in him. He understands why humans should be valued on some level, even though he's not able to conceptualize it. He is moving in that direction, right? Life, because life is, well, all-encompassing, isn't it?
There would be some degree of evil to it. So it would just be, where would be the cutoff point where I'm obligated to act?
If you assign value to life in general, then you'd have some level of ethical consideration for all life. You'd have to...
Oh, and another thing, him saying that vegans don't care about life, we take sentience over life. How is that not an absurd position that most of the world would disagree with? And if that is the position, well, obviously that's the position he took because sentience is of utmost importance, then you could understand why he's okay with abortion, right? Even all the way up to 9 months. He should be that position means that he's okay with suicide, people killing themselves because they don't feel good, right? There's no well-being in that person's life, so they should be able to take their own life. If you choose sentience as your primary axiom for human or animal value, it's very easy to reduce that to absurdity too, because most people would say that suicide is not okay. And why is that? It's because that person that wants to commit suicide because they're sad, sentience, has family members, right? Has responsibilities, is part of this social contract that says you're not going to do this. All of a sudden that exposes that there's more to humanity than just sentience, right? That's why his position gets reduced to absurdity really quickly. When he says vegans don't care about life, not only is that dishonest, not only is that not true of most vegans, it's right then and there he just reduced his entire position to absurdity that most people would disagree with. And if you do that in the debate against them, according to him, you lose. So how is he winning?
Choose what kind of threshold you want there. And if you, I mean, first of all, I'd rather just move you off of valuing life.
You can't choose a threshold because life is life. The threshold is death. Jesus, like, you know, he just plays too many games and is constantly moving the goalposts. And he wants to move them off life because that's a difficult one, right? I want to move you off life, right? Sentience, just agree with sentience. I would just agree with sentience for the fuck of it and expose how absurd that shit is.
In general, but if you stick to it, we can mess with that. I think that you would probably acknowledge that there's no reason to care about something that has no experience of reality. Like, do you think that it's morally wrong to unplug a person who's brain dead with zero chance of coming back to life?
No.
That's a difficult one because if you need machines to keep you quote unquote alive, are you really alive? You could argue that that's not life. That isn't life anyway, but you don't even need to go down that path.
Okay, so that would contradict with the system that life itself has some kind of level of value, because you didn't say there's some...
No, it wouldn't. We all know life has value. What is this guy saying? His particular brand of veganism is pure fucking evil. Life has no value? Are you kidding me? Do you now understand how antinatalism is evolving from veganism? Do you now understand how nihilistic this ideology is? Life has no value?
Microscopic problem with that is, so there's no level of problem there. It's literally just not a moral concern. So the value can't be just about something being alive.
Well, I'm just...
Yes, it can. You can't tell him that. It's his moral system. Of course, life can have value. And it has value for you, too, in your personal life. Like, it's just absurd, man. Life has no value. My God. Let's debate me, Isaac. Don't be a coward. And do say life has no value if you do debate me. I hope you say that. Or that sentience is more important than, has more value than life itself. When this is how absurd it is. Let me logically explain this to you, how you cannot take the position of sentience being more important than life itself. That's logically inconsistent. Why? Because without life, there is no sentience. So how can sentience be more important than life and have more value than life when without life, there is no sentience? Completely illogical.
Testing this argument because I've changed my position, 3 times so far, so I'm not even sure what my position is.
That's fine. That happens in here. Yeah, so if it's just life in general has value, if someone really sticks to that, then we can get further into it and we look at how much value they're putting on different life forms and then see if there's consistency.
That's moving the goalpost. He just said life. He didn't say life forms. Now he's adding life forms into, right? He's adding another variable. He's moving the goalpost. No, he just said life. Life or the absence of life, right? Sentience or the absence of sentience.
Between the value they put on humans and animals and if there's a justification for the difference, if there's a difference of value there. But the faster and more sensible route is just to point out putting value on life itself is just kind of a stupid thing to do. I mean, like... Putting
value on life in itself is kind of a stupid thing to do. When without life, there is no sentience. But sentience is more important than life. When sentience can't even exist without life in the first place. Jesus Christ. This is your foremost philosopher, veganism, at least on YouTube? This is the guy that's the fucking torchbearer when it comes to the intellectual debating, pro-veganism debating? That's the guy? Fucking A, man. Easy work. Take me to your leader. Cocksuckers, for real, take me to your leader. I'll absolutely obliterate him.
We can point to beings that are alive that you're not going to say have value, like a brain dead human, some bacteria or microorganism, a plant.
Also, one thing would be if you'd have hypersentient AI, that thing would not be alive. So by that standard, it would be okay to just shut it down because it's not a biological life form.
Yeah, it depends. Like,
Gee, genius, if we turned it on, we could turn it off.
life is fine, but if life has something to do with like having like DNA or being part of the Darwinian process or metabolism or whatever they define life as in biology, I think it's like a set of things. If it didn't meet any of those criteria, but it was hypersentient, then yeah, you'd be committed to not valuing that. So life, though, would be a strange position because it would commit you to not valuing certain hypersentient beings, and it would commit you to valuing certain beings that aren't sentient at all.
God, he's just using like word salad and all this lack of logic to wiggle his way out of a corner that Red Bat isn't savvy enough to put him in anyway, but he is making him sweat just a little bit.
Is it what that person just posted in chat true? Atoms are alive?
He's just making a joke.
Oh, it's true. I've never heard that before.
I know it's not true.
Isaac, I've got a question for you.
Well, we're kind of going with this guy right now. I mean, is it on topic? What is it?
Yeah, it's really quick. It's just, what's up, kid? Wanted to...
It's true. I've never heard that before.
Okay, so this is where I get a shout out from Ask Yourself. You know, this is my opinion. He set up this debate with a friendo vegan. You know, this guy, if you check out his channel, Red Bat Media, he's basically pro-veganism. He's just not quite there himself, and he's still clinging on to eating animal products, but he agrees with veganism on many counts, right? That's what he says on his channel. So this is another mock debate that Isaac cherry-picked, basically picking low-hanging fruit. And I'm not saying that Red Bat isn't a smart guy. He is, but he has no incentive or less incentive than someone like myself, for example, who thinks veganism has no logical basis to stand on, especially this brand of veganism, right? Red Bat has really less incentive than I to tackle this ideology. So he's easy work for Ask Yourself because he will allow himself to be manipulated, and he doesn't want to be a bad person because he already kind of feels bad about the fact that animals get slaughtered, and he kind of, so it's easy for Isaac to manipulate him emotionally and steer the conversation, and it's not much of a challenge, not because again his opponent isn't smart enough. That's not why. It's because he's just not the right kind of opponent. Basically, he's not like someone like myself. So here Isaac he asked one of his buddies, in my opinion, to bring up my comment to him, right? Because I've been making videos calling him out, exposing him for the coward that he is. Now he's gonna act like, oh, I was just debating this guy when this comment came in. But when I left him the comment, he responded himself in like just a couple of minutes after I left the comment, right? So he asked one of his buddies to mention it just to make it look like, oh, I was in the middle of a debate. That's why, I brushed you off.
I know it's not true.
Isaac, I've got a question for you.
Well, we're kind of going with this guy right now. I mean, is it...
Listen to his voice. Like, it's just so contrived, man. In my opinion, maybe you disagree, but it's rehearsed.
On topic? What is it?
Is it on topic?
No, it's really quick. It's just, what's up, kid? Want to debate name the trait? I will expose your BS if you get that.
Fake laugh. So he basically got upset that I called him kid. Look, kid, what are you, 23, 26 years old? I could be your daddy, all right? So to me, you're a kid. And so for me to call you a kid is not insulting. It's just reality. And me saying that your arguments are bullshit is not an insult. That's reality. If you have a problem with this reality that I just presented, debate me. He won't. He's scared shitless because he knows I know the trick. And it's just bullshit. He's so full of shit. It's ridiculous. But he engineered this little like, as if, as if I was just interrupting a debate and he was too busy to debate, name the trait.
Yeah, well, not everyone's polite like Red Bat Media. Sometimes we get real fucking...
Oh, that's why. Because I'm not a cuck. No offense, bro. And I'm not going to cuck myself in a debate. And I'm going to challenge everything you have to say. I'm not just going to bend over backwards and let you mentally rape me. Oh, I'm not polite. Oh, I'm not polite because I disagree. Wanker, man. This dude is so weak.
knobs sending me messages.
Yeah.
Some guy sent me an extremely rude message yesterday. I basically told him to fuck off, and then he posted a video saying I cowardly avoided debate or something. Anyway, let's.
Did you even know that was hidden?
No, I had no idea who that was, and I actually still said just go into the Crucible. I invited him twice in general chats, whatever. Anyway, that's off point.
You didn't invite me. Dude, you blocked me. Anyway, you just gave away your little fucking trick anyway. I invited him to the Crucible. I don't want to talk to any of your dumbass sycophants because they're not even going to understand the argument that I'm making because they're so brainwashed by you. They clearly don't understand when it's evident to see from the videos that I made. But anyway, we'll see what happens. Let's see if this is worthy of continuing anymore.
So yeah, Red Bats.
Oh, and Isaac, I guarantee you that if we debate, I'm going to be like a baby lamb. I'm going to be so nice and polite, and you're going to be the one getting into your feelings, calling me names like retarded and idiot. You're going to be throwing big words at me that nobody in your chat rooms or on your channel understands, and they're just going to say, yeah, Isaac, yeah, big word, yeah, oh my God, he's so smart. He must be winning. I can't understand what's going on, but he must be winning because veganism. That's essentially your audience, dude. So, oh my God, I'm going to be so nice and polite because I'm going to destroy your arguments with truth and logic. I don't need to get into my feelings like you get into your feelings when you get your ass handed to you in debates, which has happened many times already. So that's not an excuse because I'm like rude, calling you kid when I could be your daddy, and I'm for damn sure going to son you if we ever talk. So the fuck? Anyway, let's continue.
So we've got reciprocation off the table. We've got similar ethics, ability to conceptualize ethics off the table. Are you taking life off the table, or are you going to hold to that?
Thing is, I don't know whether or not I'd be okay with destroying a sentient AI. Like I'm
really
trying to think about
way
it.
to picture it. If you're having trouble with it, I mean, just to be clear, you know what sentient means, right?
Ability to think.
No, okay, so that's part of the conclusions or confusion in saying subject sentient. Is it life? Picture the most deep thoughts you've ever had and the most happy you've ever been to be thinking about things, the most awe you've ever experienced at the universe.
More emotional manipulation. Sentience is the ability to feel pain and to be aware of the fact that you exist, basically. You have a subjective reality. That's all that it means. You just know you're a being. You know you exist. You know that you're part of, for an animal, for example, part of a flock, if you will, right? Like, and you have some kind of purpose. Well, that's intelligence, I suppose. But sentience is just basically awareness and the ability to feel pain. Awareness of your reality. Which you cannot prove animals have, right? It's just something we assume because it kind of looks like it, basically. But you still can't prove it. Just like you can't prove that plants aren't sentient. And one day, well, maybe we'll get to this.
Experiences in your life, scale them up tenfold, and picture that as your resting state. That's the kind of being you'd be talking about killing. And again,
right, he's manipulating him emotionally by saying, well, imagine yourself feeling all these awesome things and feeling great, right? And then scale that up infinitely, or whatever he said, right? So he's just playing on this guy's emotions.
Rational people, if they're not asked about this in the context of like try to defend carnism, would just be like, fuck no, why the hell would I ever kill that thing? That's crazy.
What if I had... Alright, so life might be kind of hard.
The thing with what he just said right now is that if you create this kind of being that's so sentient, and how do you... This is another problem. He's, again, quantifying sentience, right? Like feeling pleasure. Now, we understand there are degrees of pleasure, but infinite degrees of pleasure? Like, does that even exist? You know, so once you start multiplying sentience by, you know, infinity and all these things, what most people will actually think of, what that will trigger in most people, is not just sentience. It'll trigger imagining an intelligent being with a family and all these other things that it'll have them imagining like humanity and bliss, basically, right? So they won't just be thinking about sentience. So you have a person that you just show doesn't quite understand sentience to begin with, and just because you defined it for them, that still doesn't mean they grasp it right off the bat, right? But then you're also talking about multiplying that sentience when they don't even quite understand what that is exactly. How are they gonna multiply it, you know what I mean, in their mind? Of course they're going to add other things onto it, and you're just manipulating this guy emotionally. That's all that you're doing.
What if
well, wait, kind of hard to defend, or are you actually moving off of it?
Moving off.
Okay.
Alright, so your position is sentience, correct?
Yeah, I value things that are sentient.
Alright, so do you value jellyfish?
Sentience cannot exist without life, right? So just by valuing sentience, you have to value life. You do. Just to say you value sentience doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It needs a being, a live being. So if you're saying you value sentience, you're actually saying that you value life. And all of a sudden, you're valuing more than just one trait. It's really that simple. It's really that simple. Logic, people. Ask yourself... I'm not saying he's not logical. Look, if you want to tell me he understands logic and he's a logical person, well, then he's just intellectually dishonest. You can't have one without the other, basically, is what I'm saying.
I think what you're trying to do there is go to gray cases about things that may or may not be sentient. When I'm not totally sure, I err on the side of caution. So I would say like a jellyfish, yeah, I'd probably give it some base level of consideration. I'm not massively concerned about jellyfish, but I wouldn't.
And yet, he won't give a fetus any consideration, right? He won't... Abortion is okay with him, right? He's one of those atheistic nihilists. Of course he's okay with abortion. I believe I heard him say that in some debate, that maybe he's changed his mind. I don't know. But he'll give a jellyfish some level of consideration, but not a fetus. How is that not absurd? How did he just not lose the argument?
Kill one for no reason.
By his own standard, of course. The game that he created. He just lost by his own rules.
Some brain data that confirms that they're non-sentient, then I would say it doesn't have value.
Yeah, I don't have that data. So if gray areas are where you err on the side of caution, what do you think about botanists who argue that some types of plants have some types of sentience?
I think that there are not any actual scientists who accept that position. So I'm just going to post in general. I hope the Wikibot's working. Just look at the general chat.
Okay, so fish weren't considered sentient up until recently, right? We didn't think that fish were sentient. But then we actually studied them and we figured out that there is some sentience there. Not as much as a human, apparently, but there's some sentient. We've realized that they seem to feel pain, at least to a degree, right? It's not clear, but it's enough evidence to deduce that, yeah, they feel pain, right? We still don't know if they're aware of their existence or anything like that, right? Because when a fish looks in a mirror, it thinks it's another fish, but maybe it just doesn't understand the concept of a mirror. I don't know, but I don't know. Not to go on too big of a tangent there, but right, just because we don't know, we can't prove that plants are sentient right now, because no one really studies this stuff. There isn't that much money in it, right? But it could one day turn out that they are. If we study them enough, we could actually reasonably, inductively reason that, well, fish are at least just as sentient as, or plants, some plants, a lot of plants are just as sentient as fish, right? Don't be surprised if in the next 10, 20 years, research comes out and says that, yeah, there is a level of sentience when it comes to plants. Plants are sentient. What will all of you vegans who value sentience over life, holy fuck, which is an illogical position anyway, but what are all of you vegans going to do? That's right, you're going to move the goalpost.
Okay, I think the Wikibot is down.
Gee.
So he's basically defining sentience and talking about how plants aren't sentient. And I agree. Well, I would say we can't prove that they are. We can't really say they aren't, because the truth is that we can't prove that they are. That's the truth.
Okay, I'll get a screenshot. One sec.
Oh, physiology and paranormal?
You don't mean to, but you're conflating the two. And any botanist who would say that is conflating the two and is not like, they probably don't understand things like philosophy of mind or any of that stuff. So the position that plants show intelligence is a uncontroversial by the entire scientific community.
Right. Plants show intelligence. Like certain trees in the forest will feed little saplings, little small trees, nutrients before those trees are able to grow up out of the canopy or high enough to be able to reach sunlight and produce enough of their own, or enough nutrients on their own, right? So that's sign of intelligent behavior. But if you keep finding stuff like that, it could eventually be used to argue for sentience, right? Well, are they just doing that? Why are they doing that, right? Why are trees feeding other trees, right? Because and I've heard vegans use the fact that, animals like to stay near each other, like a mother likes to stay near its offspring for a while. It gets to a point where the mother will reject the offspring, but vegans don't know anything about animals. But I've heard vegans using that to say that, they have family ties, these animals, and they do, which means that, they're sentient. They, it's another proof of sentience, that these animals, they grow attached to one another, right? But couldn't you say that about certain trees? I mean, we've observed this. The thing with plants is we haven't researched it enough to be able to say anything either way. Yes, it's accepted that they're not sentient, just like it was accepted that fish aren't sentient, just like it's now accepted that clams aren't sentient, barnacles, you know what I mean? Jellyfish aren't sentient. But vegans say you can't eat those either, right? It's not about sentience. It's about imposing. It's about controlling what you eat. That's what it's about. So with enough research into plants, we could reasonably induce one day, depending on what we find out, that they are sentient. And what are you vegans going to do then, I ask you?
So the plant perception physiology, that's what's totally normal. The plant perception paranormal, that's the crazy shit. Now, there's basically anti-vegan propaganda out there that
crazy shit because he says so. It's not crazy shit. It's just this sort of research is in its infancy. It's not crazy. It's extremely interesting. But, it conflicts with his worldview, with his ideology. So he has to call it crazy, which is just sophistry, man.
Conflates these two things and says vegans, plants can hear, or plants scream, show things like if you play the sound of a caterpillar biting, replicable in computers, and no one would argue that a computer is sentient. So those are examples of replicable in computers.
Yeah, like if a plant is being eaten by a caterpillar, or hears there's a plant next to a plant that's being eaten by a caterpillar, there are certain chemical reactions in the plant that's not being eaten by the caterpillar. It seems to hear, right? The plant seems to, somehow it knows that there's a caterpillar eating that plant next to it, right? Are they communicating with one another somehow? We don't know. We just don't know yet. But he says you could replicate that in a computer. Yeah, a computer that is sentient being programmed to react to certain stimuli. You know what I mean? Just because you could replicate it in a computer, that doesn't mean that plants don't have sentience. It doesn't. I'm not saying they do, because again, lots of research has to be done to be able to posit that even. But that's a non-argument. So what? You could make a computer do whatever the hell you want to make it do. You could make a computer tell jokes. That doesn't mean that it's sentient, right? You could make a computer act like it's in pain. That doesn't make it sentient. You could flip this argument around. It doesn't mean anything to say that.
And no one would argue that a computer is sentient. So those are examples of intelligent behavior. Those aren't actually any kind of proof that a plant has a subjective reality. So you would be, if you're going to base ethical consideration on that, you would need to provide evidence for it. And if not, then you'd be basically basing ethical consideration on an appeal to ignorance, which would also justify, for example, ethical consideration for rocks.
So if evidence were to come up that certain types of plants do have sentience, would those types of plants be protected under your moral axiom?
Of course, and they would be protected to the extent that they can experience sentience. If their sentience level were similar to a fly, we would value them about similar to a fly. If their sentience level were...
That's completely logically inconsistent, because he said he values sentience over life. Okay? And now he's moving the goalpost and talking about degrees of sentience. So if you value sentience over life, then as soon as it could be demonstrated that a plant has some level of sentience, doesn't matter what level of sentience, because you value sentience over life, right? You cannot eat that plant. It's not okay for you to eat that plant. But then veganism withers away, right? And this is why it's illogical to value sentience over life, because without life, there is no sentience. First comes life, then comes sentience. So of course life is more valuable, because you can't even have sentience without life. You can't. And that's why he runs into this problem, because he's illogical in the first place. He commits a fallacy. I don't know what it's called, or even if it has a name. It's just pseudo-logic, okay? And that's why he runs into this problem and has to move the goalpost. Oh, well, now it's about degrees of sentience. So he quantifies the sentience, and all of a sudden that allows him to kill the plant and eat the plant, right? Even though he said he values sentience over life, he will, he thinks it's okay to kill a sentient being. If this is his moral framework. It's inconsistent. How is it okay to kill a sentient plant? If indeed you could, hypothetical, right? If you could prove that it's sentient. Why is it okay to kill it? So there again, he exposes himself by showing that you can't reduce any one being's or plant's moral value to one trait, right? You can't. That it's it's a fallacy. His whole argument is I forgot what it's called, man. I'm tired. I've been going through this. But basically, the fallacy of the single cause, right? There are multiple reasons, multiple traits that make us different than animals, essentially. There are multiple causes, reasons, traits that why we believe that make us different than plants also. You know what I mean? It's just what it is. You can't reject that reality and pretend to have a logical argument, such as name the trait. So that's why name the trait doesn't work. It's a bunch of bullshit. That's why when you explore name the trait with Isaac and you kind of get on the right track exposing it, he has to control the situation. He has to talk over you. He has to direct what you talk about. He has to be in complete control, which is why he wants to, he suggested I talk to him. Before I gave away my entire game plan, he was willing to talk to me, supposedly. But then he saw the rest of my videos, and he said, you're rude. That's why, he will never debate anybody who understands this and is able to stand their ground and argue from, an educated position. Oops. Using logic. He will never argue somebody like that because it's just a fallacious argument. It doesn't make any sense. This guy is full of shit. He's just a kid, and his arguments are bullshit, all right? So whenever you grow a pair of balls, little kid, you know where to find me. Thank you for listening. I know it probably took a couple of hours, but hopefully some of you can find some value in this presentation. Take it easy.